All right, we're going.
All righty. Welcome to week 14. Last week was a nice bounce back week, finally, for the Moops. 4-1. So we had the Broncos, Lions, Giants, and Raiders all winners. Went into the Sunday night game. Glimmer of hope that we might get our first 5-0 week. And had the Colts plus, what would we have? Plus 10.5?
10.5, maybe 11 in one of them, but
Yep. And I believe the score was 2019 going into that fourth quarter.
it was, or at least a 1 point game. I don't know what the numbers were.
Yeah, it was a 1 point game, and they proceeded to give up like 35 points
Yeah.
in a quarter, which I haven't seen since the last time I played Madden 93. Pretty remarkable. A lot of turnovers. I think they had 5 turnovers in that game.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't like a crazy yardage game. Like nobody on the Cowboys really went too crazy with the yardage or anything like that. It was just, I think it was just a field position game, and the turnovers just gave them easy, quick scores.
Yep. And then meanwhile, our friends Brian and Jamie, I don't know if you saw my email today, but Saturday morning, it was like 11 o'clock. I'm taking a shit, and I get an urgent text from Tom, who's our proxy in Vegas.
Yeah.
Says, Tristan, I need your picks. And he goes, deadline was at 11. And I wrote him back and I said, I've already submitted our picks. I put them in Friday night, and I even looked, I had forwarded them to you. And then he went back and he took a look and he goes, oh, I have the Moops. I need big W, little N. And so I had to text. I thought for a minute, I thought about, because now we've got this little rivalry with those guys. And I'm like, do I say anything to them? But I fired off a text and I go, guys, you got to get your picks in. You have like 5 minutes. And Brian puts the picks in. They went 4-1.
Oh,
And
nice.
I asked Brian on Sunday night, because I knew at that point they were 4-1. I go, so had you guys discussed the games and just had forgotten to put them in? Or did you just get up off the couch and put those in with like no thought? And he was like, it was the latter. Like, great. That's how your season's going,
Yeah.
Anyway, but that's why I put in my email to them today. I said, make sure you get your picks in. I don't want to hear from Tom again. Next time, there will be no next time. Great Phil Leotardo quote. But overall though, I thought, we obviously with a 4-1 week, but thought we had a pretty good read on the board. Even again, as I think has kind of been the case for us, like, even some of the games that we didn't take, I think, we had some pretty good leans as well. Which was good. But yeah, overall, I mean, any thoughts in terms of the picks from last week? Anything that stuck out to you?
No. 4-1's obviously great. I don't think it's worth beating ourselves up over that one loss. It was a great read through 3 quarters, and then everything kind of fell apart. But I think we'd take a 4-1 week every week. So I don't think there's any real takeaways. I think it felt nice to kind of get back to it. I think last week was a good call. So
Yep.
I think the weeks prior we were kind of rushing through things and not really able to flesh out our ideas or anything, and I think that really cost us. And I think the proof is in the pudding right there when you look at the numbers. So it was just good to get back on the call and kind of right the ship a little bit.
Yep. So we updated records. Super contest, we're 28, 34, and 3. So we have 29.5 points. And then in the circa, we're 27, 34, and 4. We have 29 points in that one. So all right. So as we look ahead to week 14, some just kind of high level stats, best teams against the spread. You get the Giants and the Bengals. Interesting to see the Bengals climb into that top spot along with the Giants. The Giants have pretty much been there all season long, but both teams are 9-3 ATS. Worst teams against the spread. Now it's just the Bucs. They're 3-8-1. The Rams were also 3-8-1, but obviously they covered tonight with that win, that straight up win over the Raiders. Dallas with the best cover margin, plus 8.6. Underdogs. That stat's weird. Let me see. Hold on. Let me see what the dogs are. Underdogs 99.85-6 ATS. Home dogs 41-31-3. I think that's all I had in terms of, and then the other thing, we did this last week, but just kind of looking at Action Network just to kind of see where the bets are, and where the public is. So public fades again. My threshold for that is any team that's being bet at below 40%. You get the Browns at 39% against the Bengals, the Bills at 39% against the Jets, the Eagles only 39% of the public against the Giants. Broncos are at 34% against the Chiefs, Chargers at 39% against the Dolphins, and then the Cardinals at 35% against the Pats. Do you have your home dogs list?
Yeah, we just got 4. Giants +7, Chargers +3, Broncos +9.5, Cardinals +1.5. Also 2 teams coming off a bye. We got the Cardinals +1.5 and the Panthers +3.5. They're on the road at Seattle.
Yeah. All right. All right. Shall we get into it?
Yeah.
All right. First game. You get the Lions, who are home favorites against the Vikings. So Lions are favored by 2.5. A few stats here I pulled. Cousins is 3-9-1 in toss-up games, ATS, since 2018. Toss-up games being games in which the spread is between +3 and -3. Cousins is also, I thought this was interesting. Against the spread after a straight up win since 2017, he is the least profitable quarterback in the NFL. He is 17-29-2. Lions have covered him 5 straight, first time since 2018. And Goff is the anti-Cousins. He is 25-13, or I guess Goff is Cousins. He's 25-13 ATS in the 1 p.m. window. So he's also very, very strong in that early game window. Any initial thoughts on this one?
Yeah, let me just see. I'm just reading one thing. Yeah, so I think that this kind of just, I think the Lions should almost be a blind bet. We don't necessarily have to put it on the card, but I think this should be the side that we're on just because of how much that line really stands out, right? The Vikings, they're one of the best teams in the league. The Lions are kind of a middle of the road team, but they've shown that they're feisty. They've shown they can compete, especially under Dan Campbell. We've seen that they can really cover the spread. When it's inside of a field goal, you're really just picking who you think is going to win. It's way too hard to try and handicap a 1-point game or something like that. There is a stat. I'll just read it straight from the thing I pulled it from. The 5-7 Lions are favored over the 10-2 Vikings this week. Over the last 20 years, 89 teams have been under 500 straight up and been listed as a favorite over a team with a win percentage of 80% or higher. Only 8 times has one of those 89 games been played in December or later. The last time a team with its starting quarterback and 80% plus win percentage was a dog versus a team who was under 500 in December or later, it was the 9-2 Falcons in 2004. Michael Vick, 1.5 underdogs in Tampa Bay, who were 4-7. The Bucs won that game 27-0. I think it's just one of those things where, what's that?
27-0.
Yeah.
Oh shit.
So I think it's just one of those where it's you just got to play the spot. You can't really put too much stock in a one side or the other. I think it's one of those where you're just gonna say Vegas knows something. Doesn't seem like there's any notable injuries to this game. So I think you got to take the Lions as a favorite here.
Yeah, that's where my head was at too. I mean, I think beyond that though, like love the way the Lions are playing. As I said, they've covered them 5 straight. They're playing really good football. They continue to get healthier. There's a lot of, I think just positive momentum that's building in that locker room. I think, they have a shot too. Like they're They're kind of working their way back in the mix. And I think too, just generally, like, I mean, look, the Vikings are a good football team. They have a great record. They have that big win over the Bills, obviously. But I think even if you just go and look through their resume over the course of this season, you know, they've been in some like close kind of one-score games against teams that maybe don't belong on the field with them. I don't think that they've been impressive. So, yeah, I think a line that kind of stinks a little bit seems curious. I agree with your read of let's just kind of ride the hot hand in the Lions and assume that Vegas is kind of playing into something here.
Yeah, I mean, it's I don't know if it necessarily makes the top five. I could definitely be talked into putting it there. I think it's just one of those where you just got to play the spot and you got to say, you know what, this line stinks for a reason.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I'm looking at the last five for the Vikings going back to the November 6th when they played Washington, and they pushed, they won outright, and they pushed the spread as 3-point. They were 3-point underdogs. That can't be right. They wrote that down wrong. They were 3-point favorites. They pushed
Yeah, they were
that.
3-point favorites. Yep.
Yep, they were 6-point dogs against Buffalo. They did win outright on there. They were 2-point dogs. This is where I think it's interesting too. Is they were 2-point dogs at home for that Dallas game. They end up getting blown out, of course, by 37 points. Only scored 3. 3-point favorites against the Pats. They did win by a touchdown, but of course that game was much closer than just a touchdown. It was very back and forth. And then last week, of course, they had that kind of dogfight where they let the Vikings or where they let the Jets kind of claw their way back into it. So, yeah, I mean, I think it is just one of those where, if we're taking a side here, it's got to be the Lions.
Yeah. And, let's also remember these two teams played earlier this season, 28-24. Lions had a real chance to win that football game. Yeah. And that's back before the Lions really got things going,
Yeah.
So, all right, let's mark it as a lean and, when we can come back to, but I think, very clearly a lean on the Lions side for us on that one. All right, next game, you get the Bills at home, laying 9.5 against the Jets. What's your initial thoughts?
Yeah, I don't really love a side here. The last time they played, I believe that was when Josh Allen got the elbow injury.
Yeah.
What happened? I'm pretty sure the Jets they won that game, right? They won outright.
Yeah, they won outright.
And that was just kind of like a crazy game. It was like a very physical battle, and I remember that was kind of the take on that. If the Jets were going to win, it was going to be because they played hard, they hit hard, and it was that type of thing. And that's what they did. And we've seen the Jets. They've been competitive in a lot of these games. They're not necessarily covering the spread at that great of a clip or anything. But we've seen them play tough, and we know that they can hang around. I guess if I got to pick a side, I do lean Buffalo here still. Josh Allen 7-2 against the spread in December since 2020. Playing good defenses has actually been good for him against the spread. He's 13-5 straight up against defenses allowing less than 20 points per game, 14-3-1 against the spread against those defenses. So I do think, inside 10, I do like Buffalo here. If we're picking a side, not my top 5. I don't really like the Jets here. I'm not a huge believer in the Jets this year anyways. I think that they've just had some interesting breaks go their way in certain games, but it's also one of those where I don't really feel like riding the hand of Mike White, because we've seen already that he has that little pop and then he comes crashing back down to earth. And last week it felt like it was going to be that game and the Vikings allowed them to hang around, but I'm not looking to really ride Mike White too much.
Keep in mind, like the Bills were also, that was the game that he had the meltdown last year. 4 picks pulled from the game in the fourth quarter, and he lost to 36-year-old Joe Flacco, 45-17. So, there's a little bit of history here in terms of the Bills, for lack of a better phrase, having his number, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, even like looking back at last week, he threw the ball 57 times, completed 54% of his passes, but he did, he somehow out of that put up 369 yards, no passing touchdowns, 2 picks. It's like he was asking for that to be the game last week, and the Vikings just didn't allow it to happen. But even the Jets run game just it hasn't seemed it's had something missing, of course, since Brees Hall went out. But even last week they did get 90 yards out of Zonovan Knight. James Robinson's been useless since he's returned from or since he got traded. But the run game's not there, and that's what they really need. And when you rely on Mike White to throw that many times, I don't think that really works out. So if we're picking a side, it's going to be the Bills. I don't really love it too much, though.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely lean Bills. I don't know if I love it. But I think it's a lean for us. So but we can move on to the next game. All right, we got the Steelers at home, laying 2.5 against the Ravens. It sounds like the latest Lamar we can assume is out, right?
Yeah, he's out.
So it's the backup is Huntley.
Huntley, Tyler Huntley.
Tyler Huntley. Um, they squeaked one squeaked one out against the Broncos last week. Didn't cover, obviously. We're on the Broncos side for that, but and again, very typical of Russell Wilson to have the lead up until like the last minute of that game and then lose it like that. But the yeah, I don't, what do you think here? I mean, Ravens haven't looked good. Now they're with their backup. Now they're on to their backup QB. What side are you on? Are you on one?
Yeah, at first my knee-jerk reaction was to go with Pittsburgh here, but then I was kind of looking into it and I actually flip-flopped. One thing I saw, or a couple things I saw that I thought were interesting was, so we're always so focused on the Ravens against bad teams.
Mm-hmm.
Now that I'm seeing it, I think that might be. I mean, it also depends because this is just Harbaugh versus teams with an inferior record. So that could also be if they're
Yeah.
10-5, this could be playing a team that's 9-6 or something. So it doesn't necessarily factor in the bad teams. But maybe our reads off with that, right? Because Harbaugh versus teams with inferior records, he's 25-5 straight up,
Yep.
but 14-16 against the spread. But the thing that I found interesting is that he's only been an underdog twice in that instance, and he's 2-0 straight up and against the spread there. Tomlin versus Baltimore, 18-15 straight up, 16-14-13 against the spread. So a slight edge at home, 4-4 straight up, 2-5-1 against the spread, 6-12-1 against the spread as favorites against Baltimore. So, this kind of spot does not really seem great for Mike Tomlin. And because of that, I feel like this is kind of an unassuming spot for the Ravens. This is the time that you want to take them, right? Everyone's kind of, so focused on no Lamar, let's fade them. But the Steelers, they haven't been great. Obviously there's been those issues, George Pickens. I would expect him to get more involved this week after, after he was kind of pissed about his target share last week. And I saw Mike Tomlin's comments about him and how he was saying, he'd rather have guys that want the ball than guys that aren't really saying anything. It's more about learning how to express that, not be unprofessional, disrespectful, anything like that. So I do think, the Steelers, they still have things to work on. They're not a perfect team. They're far from it. But I think that this is a spot where, people are maybe getting cold on the Ravens because they have not been playing well down the stretch. Now they've lost Lamar, and this is exactly when we want to take them.
Yeah, I think that's right. I agree. And I look at this as like, okay, without Lamar, I think this, this is going to be a very close football game.
Yeah.
And if now, in what I believe is going to be a very competitive football game, we can actually get the Ravens getting points. And I could see this very well being just a very low scoring game, grinded out, comes down to late in the fourth quarter. And, I think the Ravens could win this thing outright. I still believe that. So, and I feel like last year, not that like Huntley's great or anything. I'm certainly not saying that, but I feel like he gave them a little bit of a burst.
Yeah, he was playing good enough for people to just be like, like the dummies on Twitter to be like, oh, Lamar's asking for this big bag, but they could always just roll with Huntley. And he's a serviceable backup, and I think it helps that he has a similar play style to Lamar, so he's able to step in, and you don't have to change the offense too much either. You can kind of keep it rolling. And since he already has that experience as a player and as a starting quarterback, you could feel a little more confident rolling with them. So I like it. I mean, especially when you look at Pittsburgh, down the past stretch, right? Going back 5 weeks, they got their doors blown off, lost by 22 to Philly, won 2010 to New Orleans. They lost to Cincinnati, and they were tough in that game. They hung around. But
Mhm.
even like the Indy game, right? They were blowing them out in the first half, and then let Indy right back into it. Only won by a touchdown, and
Mhm.
they squeaked out a win against Atlanta last week as well. I'm pretty sure, was Atlanta not on the goal line last week, like ready to win it? Or I might be thinking of Washington. I might be thinking of the Washington game,
Yeah, I
but
think yeah, yep.
yeah, but
Yeah.
I feel like Atlanta was driving though to
They
I,
uh they were I know I looked at that game quickly late in the fourth quarter, and actually let me just look it up because I think they had the ball and an
They were
opportunity.
fourth and goal. They kicked a field goal that got it 19-16.
Yeah.
And then Pittsburgh got it back, was able to run enough time down. Um,
Did they run out the clock or did Atlanta? Oh, they got the
they
ball
threw
back.
a deep pass and it got intercepted.
Yeah, that's what it was.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Okay. Um but oh, you know what it was is I think I looked at it when they were driving to get the field goal, but I was watching that and I'm like, it's 19-13 and
Yeah.
I'm myself, oh, here we fucking go. But yeah. Yeah, no, I think it's a good spot. I think interesting spot to pick the Ravens. And again, close football game. They got a great kicker. I like them to win it straight up. So if I can get them getting 2.5 points, why
Yeah.
not? Um, all right, cool. Let's move to the next game. We got the Eagles and the Giants at MetLife, and the Giants are getting 7, so they are one of the home dogs you mentioned earlier. The
Yeah. So,
first,
this is a home dog I like a lot, actually. Jalen Hurts, 2-3 straight up, 1-4 against the spread
yep,
on the road against divisional opponents. The last 20 years, December or later, teams with a 90% plus win percentage. They are 25, 53 and 1 against the spread. They're 8, 32 and 1 against the spread on the road. So that screams prime spot to fade the Eagles here. Daniel Jones, 2-2 straight up, 3-1 against the spread against Philly. He's 1-0 against Hurts, straight up and against the spread. 11-5 against the spread against the division, 9-3 as a divisional dog. And the Giants are frisky, and they're obviously they are the best cover team in the league. And I think this is another good chance to kind of hop on that and hope that they could just be a tough divisional NFC East battle and keep it within a touchdown.
yeah. I'm with you on that. I think I wonder too. I mean, coming off like even just for the Eagles, like that was a pretty like emotionally driven game against the Titans last week. Obviously, with AJ Brown having a
Did
little
you
bit
see
of
his touchdown celebration?
which one? Because he
The
scored
one,
two, right?
yeah, the one where he was like making like a whipping motion to the goalpost. And were they in Tennessee or were they in Philly?
uh oh, where were they? That's a good question. Hold on. Um
They were in
wait.
Philly, but he was whipping the goalpost, and
Yeah.
then he like points at it like this, and they asked him about it, and he said, they asked him about it at his press conference, and pretty much he said he was giving him a beating, he was giving him a whooping, but he wanted to let him know, I still love you. I do this because I love you. And I think it could be a little problematic, but I thought it was
A little
absolutely
bit.
hilarious.
Yeah, yeah. I could see where some people might think that that's inspired by,
Yeah.
the but I do wonder too, like, is there a little bit of a, that and I mean that came too, like that performance ended up resulting in the Titans GM getting fired. So I think that was probably a game that, AJ Brown and probably the rest of the team had circled for him on the calendar. Big game, and then now you've got to go the following week on the road to a tough divisional opponent who's playing really good football, as you said, top cover team in the league. I think Dable's got him. He's got him fired up, playing well. They're right in the mix. So getting 7 at home, I think it's a pretty good spot.
Yeah, and they haven't played yet this year, so we haven't seen Dayball versus Philly yet. But he does have that connection with with Jalen Hurts and Devontae Smith as well. So I feel like there's a little bit there where, I don't know how extensive he can go with it, but I think he knows how to play him. He'll be a little more prepared for him as well. So I like the Giants to keep it within a touchdown here. And maybe this could be one of those where they end up shocking them. But I just feel like all the stats just really point to the Giants as well, whether it's the teams with a 90% winning percentage in December and that terrible against the spread record, especially on the road. And Hurts has not been great in the division. Jones has been great in the division. So I feel like it's worth maybe trying to play these trends.
Yep. Agree. Cool. Next game we've got the Bengals and the Browns. We're in Cincy. The Bengals are laying 6. We talked about this earlier this year. I think it was a game that we, in retrospect, were a little frustrated we missed because it seemed like small sample size. Burrow had a tough history against the Browns. They do seem to have his number. He's 0-4 against them straight up. He is 2-2 against the spread, so that's worth noting. And then you may have seen this because I think we're probably pulling stats from similar spots, but Burrow is successful in the cold, 5-0 ATS and 40 degrees or colder. I did look up the weather. It is supposed to be low 30s in Cincy this weekend. I think bear in mind too, this is a Browns team that now is with Deshaun Watson at QB. This is only his second game back. I think we saw last week, as we expected, a lot of rust there. Struggled against the Texans. Normally I think following the trend, I would have said lean the Browns getting the points, but I actually do kind of like the Bengals in this spot here. I like the way they're playing. And again, I think being able to take advantage of the fact that it's Deshaun Watson's second game in 2 years. I think it's an interesting spot for the Bengals to cover. What do you think?
Yeah, I could kind of be talked into either side, but I think I feel stronger on the Bengals side just because they are, they're hot and they're just clearly the better team. I could kind of see arguments for both sides about Watson, right? Because he played like absolute shit, but they still covered pretty easily against the Texans. But then you could also make the argument that it's the Texans and they're terrible,
Yeah.
all that stuff. But I do think that he's still going to be rusty for at least a couple weeks, maybe for the rest of the season. But I just feel like he was very bad last week. So if you can, if you feel confident, maybe some positive regression, maybe you could say, well, given how the Browns typically play Burrow close, and then Deshaun, if he bounces back even a tiny bit, maybe that can give him a boost. At the same time, I do like being inside a touchdown here. It's more of a fence on the fence game for me. I don't necessarily love a side, but if I, gun to my head, I'd probably just, put my trust in the Bengals.
Yeah. Yep. All right. We can mark it as a lean. All right. Next game, you got the Titans at home laying 4 against the Jaguars. I texted you earlier. I don't know if you saw this, but the podcast I listened to, the Dream podcast with RJ Bell and Steve Fezzik, I get in the car to start my drive home from the office. I put the podcast on. I pull up my street 50 minutes later.
Yeah.
This was the first game they started talking about. And when I got home 50 minutes later, they were still on this game. Like the number of tangents and rabbit holes that this game led them down. It got to a point they were talking about stuff that didn't even have anything to do with the game, but I was just laughing as I was pulling up my street because I'm like, I thought I would at least cover 4 or 5 games,
Yeah.
and we were still on game 1. I'm like, this must be the longest podcast I've recorded all season. But I some things I did gather both from that as well as some other research. Titans do have really strong history against the Jags. They've covered 8 of their last 10. They are 6-0 ATS against losing teams this season. Jags are 1-5 ATS on the road. And then I think too, looking at injuries, I mean, I know Lawrence came back into the game last week, but he's hurt. He did not practice, I think, yesterday. I know Tannehill is hurt as well, but he was limited, so I think he probably seems more likely to play. And then the other thing I did hear, I mean, the Jags, they have the 31st ranked D since week 8. So I mean, clearly one of the worst defenses in the league over the last 5-6 weeks. Um, I I do like the Titans in the spot. They've lost 2 games in a row. They need a win. Again, we mentioned this briefly when we were talking about the Eagles game because they were coming off that big win over the Titans, but Titans also just fired their GM, which I think actually maybe says a lot about just, is that like a power play for Vrabel where like, the team, was there any sort of kind of dissension between like GM and head coach and, ownership has made the decision, like we're putting all our chips, behind our head coach. Does that rally the team? But, he's usually a guy that can get his team up. And I think a Jaguars team that's coming off an absolute turd against the Lions, this feels like a good spot for Tennessee to bounce back and cover.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny you say that podcast is spending so much time on him because I kind of just feel how I felt about that Jags Lions game last week, where you just have to say this is like a spot where the Jags are just going to get beat up. Like you said, there is that history with the Titans. They seem to have some success against the Jags. One thing that I'm looking at right now because it made me think about that Thursday night football game where it was kind of like Derrick Henry's coming out party, right? So I'm looking at it now. 17 attempts, 238 yards, 4 touchdowns. That was against Jacksonville. I always think about that game when they played, and I'm just looking through, and it's like he just has so much success against them. Obviously that one. I'm looking at. Let's see. I'm going up to 2019. He had 159 yards, 2 touchdowns, 44 and a touchdown there, 84
That coming
yards.
out game, wasn't that at a point in his career where like nobody was starting him in fantasy?
Yeah,
And
he was like barely even rostered because I think it was like, because when he was a rookie, he was splitting the backfield with DeMarco
Dion
Murray. They
Lewis.
brought him along slowly. And, that's what I've been saying about like Traylon Burks. And, you can look at AJ Brown too. It's like they don't just drop their guys, their rookies in the pool and say, learn how to swim. Like they do bring these guys along slowly
Yeah.
because it's a very good organization.
It
And,
was
they
Dion,
know
it
what
was
they're
Dion
doing.
Lewis that year too.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
Dion Lewis was like taking the lion's share. Yeah.
Yeah. He had another one, 26 attempts, 215, 2 touchdowns,
Yeah.
29 attempts, 130 yards, 3 touchdowns. And then, they haven't played yet this year, but I mean, I think this is just a spot where the Titans stomp them. Lawrence is 0-2 straight up against the spread against Vrabel in both of those games. He's failed to cover by an average of 12.8 points per game. So he's been getting blown out as well. Because I'm assuming the Titans were also favorites on top of that. So they've been really getting killed. We're talking, 15, 20-point losses, I'd say. I saw another one. Lawrence, he's had 3 games on the second leg of a road trip. He's 0-3 straight up against the spread. They've missed the cover by 12 points per game there. Vrabel and Tannehill off of a loss, 11-6-1 against the spread, off a straight up loss. And after a double digit loss, they're 11-2 straight up and 9-3-1 against the spread. I think this is a great bounce back spot for them. This is where Derrick Henry can, because Derrick Henry has not been running the ball great lately. So I think this is a game where they can reestablish that and, give him 30 carries and he gets 180 yards, a couple touchdowns. Hopefully Traylon Burks does come back. I don't think he's practiced yet this week, but it would be nice to get him back in it. That would make me feel even more confident. But I like the Titans to stomp him here, get a win back.
Actually, I'm interested in Traylon Burks.
He hasn't practiced yet.
Practice yet? Yeah. Hopefully he gets in there. Good player. Okay. All right. I think it's a good leg for us. All right, next game, you got the Cowboys and the Texans. Cowboys are at home, laying a big number, 16.5. And I think you said you texted me, or maybe you sent me a DM on Twitter, but is it Davis Mills back in at quarterback?
Yeah, he's back.
I mean, the Kyle Allen.
Yeah, I don't really understand why they did it because it's like Davis Mills is definitely better than Kyle Allen. He was arguably the best rookie last year, rookie quarterback, I should say, last year. So I just thought it was bizarre that they benched him because it's not like he was winning with them anyway. So if they're trying to tank, why not just keep the guy in there and keep losing? And then if you're trying to win games, I don't think that you really gave yourself a better opportunity. So all you did was, potentially damage the confidence of Davis Mills, who, I mean, hey, maybe they've already decided in their heads that they're going quarterback. I've been saying I don't think that's necessarily what they have to do in this draft. They have 2 first rounders in this draft. I'm pretty sure they have 2 first rounders in 24 as well. And they have so many holes on that team. Like, I don't think Davis Mills is the problem. I think that we saw that.
Yeah.
in these past 2 weeks that it's clearly it's not like, oh, okay, they got Davis Mills out of there and all of a sudden they look competent or something. It's like, no, they have a very bad O line. That
Yeah.
defense has some holes. They definitely need another
Well, and
receiver.
and to your point too, it's like if you go out and draft like a Bryce Young or something, like is he going to be any more successful than Davis
Yeah, and
Mills?
then
Like,
that's what I've been
he's
saying. Like,
not better than Davis Mills.
because people are saying, "Oh, I want to see CJ Stroud go to Houston." It's like I think Stroud behind that Houston line as is. I mean, who's to say they could go out and spend a ton of money or
It probably
use
looked
that
like
first
Fields
round or
last year.
what's that?
It probably looked like Fields last year, who was going to be running
Yeah,
for his.
because I mean, especially the thing with Stroud is that he's very much a system quarterback, and he could be extremely successful if he goes to the right team. But
Yeah.
right now, it's like I think Detroit would be the good spot for him because of that O line. But it's like he's a guy where he's not able to get out of the pocket and create on his own. I think Bryce Young would be able to do that better. But then at the same time, you could also make the argument with Bryce Young. He's so small. He's like
Yeah.
5'11" and like 170 pounds. That's like all of a sudden if he's not getting that protection, he might
Yeah.
break in two. So so like I don't necessarily think that the Texans, unless they're absolutely enamored by one of these guys, I don't think they really need to go quarterback because you can fill that out. You know
Yeah.
that you have a suitable quarterback in Davis Mills. Ride him out a year because hey, maybe he takes that step year 3 that you were hoping he was going to take this year based off of his rookie season,
Yeah.
and maybe you actually do have your guy and don't actually have to use one of these first on a quarterback. Or if he's so bad, you suck again, and then you're just right back at the top of the draft anyways. You can get a
Yeah.
guy like Caleb Williams.
Yeah.
So like, I mean, I'm sure the Texans they're just going to go quarterback no matter what, assuming that they're still in position to get one. But I think that they should strongly reevaluate that process. But with this pick, I don't know. It's tough because
It's a big
like
move.
I do think like I don't think going back to Davis Mills, I don't think that puts them in a worse spot.
Mhm.
Maybe they get a boost because maybe they're like, all right, this is the guy that we're going to roll with for the rest of the season. Let's rally back around him, something like that. But I was seeing it's like teams in this spot, teams that win as much as the Cowboys playing against bad teams like the Texans. Um, so 65% win percentage or better versus 25% or less. 71 103 against the spread since 2020. Those winning teams are 30, 53, and 2 against the spread. The biggest dogs this year, I think one is covered, one hasn't. The Rams, they covered barely, as 16 and a half point dogs. They lost by 16 to Kansas City.
Mhm.
Houston were 14 and a half point dogs to Miami, and they failed to cover by half a point. So that's 2 games, 1-1, one covered by half a point, one didn't cover by half a point. So it's tough to tell there. Double-digit favorites are 7-13 against the spread this season, though. The only thing that kind of brought me back into it though was Dak, when he's a 7 point favorite or better, he's 18-3 against the spread. He's 14-6-1, or 18-3 straight up, 14-6-1 against the spread. In December, he's 6-0 straight up, 4-1-1 against the spread in that spot. So it's like it's kind of conflicting there. The trend makes me want to fade the Cowboys and take the points there, but at the same time, it looks like Dak, he does have some success as a bigger dog. Maybe they can put keep the foot on the gas there, but it's just I don't know. It's maybe too many points, and I don't know if I necessarily want to back the Texans there. I think that it could be one of those where it does just come down to maybe it's an 18-point game, maybe it's a 15-point game, and you're
Yeah.
kind of sweating
Yeah.
it out the whole way. I could see it being a lot like that Rams Chiefs game where they beat them handily and they never have a chance, but we're also really sweating out that spread. So it might just be too many points to really take that Cowboys side. And I don't know about the
Yeah, I
Texans.
think I think I'm comfortable just passing on the game just due to the sheer size of the spread. Like because I mean then like, I'm already looking ahead to a world in which, on Sunday, Texans get the ball first, they go down, they score a touchdown, and suddenly we're chasing 23 and a half points.
Yeah.
Great, awesome. And then we're sweating it out to the bitter end.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'd almost rather not. All right, let's check in on the next game. We got the Dolphins and the Chargers. This game's in LA. Dolphins are laying 3. This is the second of back-to-back West Coast California games for the Dolphins. Obviously, they were in San Francisco last week. Very strange game, I thought. Like obviously the final score looks really bad. and looks even worse in terms of losing to Brock Purdy, who came in for Jimmy G after he got hurt. But some of what I read and heard is like, if you kind of look beyond the surface, like the Dolphins actually didn't play that bad. I think Tua just missed a number of open receivers that normally he's been hitting, and I think that was a big.
Yeah, I mean, he was also missing both his starting tackles as well. So when you're going against a team that has Nick Bosa on the D line, and you're so reliant on just stepping back, trusting your reads and stuff, and you're not able to do that, it is going to make stuff tough. And Tua, I mean, he was overthrowing a lot, especially at the beginning of the game. So it could have just been one of those where maybe the moment was a little too big. And I think Mike McDaniel was saying today that it might have just been one of those where the playoff atmosphere maybe got guys a little too amped up, because that's really what those misses are, right? When you're overthrowing guys, it's because you're just putting too much on it, and a lot of times it is you're just coming out too hot and unable to reel it in and put that touch on it. This is ultimately a pass for me. I feel like this is going to be a field goal game. I don't know which way it's going to go in. It's one of those where I just feel like it's not really a great spot for either. Tua, he's much better at home than he is on the road. I did see he's 3 against the spread at night. His only loss, he's 3-1 straight up, but 1-3 against the spread at night. The only straight up loss was the concussion game, so you can't really call that a loss. He played a quarter and a half. But he's not great on the road. Herbert, he's not really great in night games either. He's a little bit better, 6-4 against the spread. The one thing I did find interesting, since 2001, teams are 7-15 against the spread after playing in Las Vegas. So, maybe that's a point for the Dolphins there. But I just think this is going to be a field goal game. I think it's too close on the spread. I don't really love either side.
Yeah, I think I was kind of feeling the same way. I mean, I could see Herbert, especially in a prime, in a spot like this, like, just keeping it close. And yeah, I don't know. Hard to kind of read. Dolphins again. Second game on the West Coast. How does that affect them? But with the Chargers, I mean, they don't even really have like a home team environment. And could this also be a spot in which like, the Dolphins kind of come back and show like last week was a bit of a fluke?
Yeah, I could almost see it being like a more contested version of the Texans game, where maybe the Dolphins, they start off hot. I mean, I guess we kind of saw that last week too, right? They started off with a 75-yard touchdown right off the bat.
Yeah.
But I could see them maybe starting off hot, and then it's one of those where the Chargers are just chipping away for the rest of the game, and all of a sudden it's 5 minutes left in the fourth quarter, and it's a 10-point game, and the Chargers have the ball, and you're like, oh, Jesus Christ, I hope we can just get a push here.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't know. I think it's going to be within a score. I do think the Dolphins will win, but I think it's just too close to call that. It's too much of a coin flip for me to really pick a side.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Next game. This is an interesting spread to me. You get the Seahawks at home, laying 3.5 to the Panthers. That line seems low to me.
Yeah. Well, let me pull up. So I'm actually not sure how has Seattle been. I mean, I think the big thing, maybe it's not too jarring when you really think about it with the injuries, right? Because they are. I forget. I don't even remember what Travis Homer is going to be like the starting running back this week. Ken Walker's out, so it's been a real big engine for their offense.
I know it said he and DJ Dallas didn't practice Wednesday.
Yeah, it seems like they're really going to be dipping into the reserves for their running backs.
Yeah.
Let me just double check on that. Hold on. Yeah, no practice Thursday either. But what was I going to say? Seattle, they have dropped 3 straight against the spread. Carolina's they've won 3 straight against the spread. Obviously, I mean, I've been very big on Carolina since they made the coaching change, and I was saying that I don't know exactly how great they've been. I know they've won 4 of the last 5 against the spread.
Yep.
So that's kind of how I felt. I felt like they were going to rally around Wilkes. I thought he was definitely a better coach than Matt Rule, at least in terms of being in the NFL. Yeah, I just feel like this is going to be a classic low-scoring game. I think the Panthers could win this one outright. I think maybe they're buzzing a little bit. I don't think Darnold's necessarily the savior, but he's given them something. I found this interesting. Since 2016, Eastern time road teams on Pacific time, they're 62-41-5 against the spread.
Mhm.
Teams that are under 500 making the trip from east to west are 35-17-2 against the spread. So that travel doesn't seem to affect these teams too much, anyways. But yeah, I mean, I like the Panthers outright here. I just think that they're a tough team. I think that with how the game script's going to go. I mean, maybe with no Ken Walker, maybe that requires Gino to throw it more and more and more. But I think that this Panthers defense is equipped to kind of keep them in check with DK and Tyler Lockett and everything. And I think that the Panthers, I think that they can make this competitive. I think they can win this one outright. So I like them as 3.5-point dogs.
Okay. Coming off a bye too, so they've had time to prepare.
Yeah.
The huh. I mean, you've been on the Panthers a couple times this year too, and I feel like you've been right.
Yeah.
Like you were on them in that what was it, the Broncos game, right?
The Broncos and the Falcons game for sure.
And then I think we looked at them for the Rams game and they nearly covered. And that was right after I
Yeah,
think
that was as soon as they made the change.
over. Yeah. And then they beat the Bucs outright the following week.
Yep.
Yeah, covered against the Falcons. It was a 3-point game. And that was a game they should have won it too, right?
Yeah, that was the one where DJ Moore they
Yeah.
penalized him on the extra point.
Yeah, yeah. They had a little bit of an out. I don't know if it's an outlier game, but they got handled pretty bad against the Bengals. But it's the Bengals.
Yeah.
Rough looking loss against the Ravens, but they also made the Ravens look pretty bad.
And they covered
themselves, and they covered. Yeah. Interesting pick. It's one of those picks that too, like it's not a sexy pick, but doesn't have to be sexy if it wins.
Yeah, Panthers are 6-6 against the spread, but they've covered 4 of the last 5, so they're on quite a run.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's just one of those where maybe there's still, people are just going to look at it and blindly bet the Seahawks because the spread's so small, and then also because of the perception from earlier in the season. But the Seahawks, they're not really doing that anymore. They did win last week, but I mean they won by 4 points against John Wolford and the Rams.
Yeah.
It feels like they've kind of been fading these past couple weeks, especially starting back with that game against Tampa Bay out in Germany. So, with no Ken Walker, he's been great. I mean, he's been fading a little bit down the stretch anyways, but having to go that deep into your running back reserves when, your coach is historically so run heavy, I think it just calls for a low scoring game, and that's where the Panthers seem to thrive. So,
Yeah.
this is an instance where both teams are going under 20 points. I like the Panthers a lot in that spot.
Yeah. All right, let's mark it as a like. All right, next game. It's an interesting one. 49ers at home, laying 3.5 against the Bucs. Tom Brady coming home, and he's going up against a 7th-round rookie QB, and Brady's a dog. Maybe rightfully so, though. What do you think on this game?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know. It feels weird still making them, especially such, over a field goal there. I've been kind of back and forth because I was thinking, it's Tom Brady. He's back in the Bay. He's back home, all that stuff. It's also Brady versus Shanahan again. I'm not sure if they've played since the Super Bowl, the Falcons Super Bowl. And then I thought on the other side too, it's like, Shanahan, he's definitely the type to kind of be always thinking about that. And, oh, how could I have done it differently? How could I have managed the clock better and not even allowed them to get back into it? Because that was a big thing. A lot of that loss was on Shanahan and his mismanagement of the offense in the second half.
Yeah.
He instead of just committing to the run, he kept throwing the ball, left way too much clock, allowed Brady to, climb back into it. And of course, we know how that game ended. This is the second time Brady's been an underdog versus a rookie quarterback. The first and only time before this was against Vince Young of the Titans. They were 3.5, but the Pats were 3.5-point dogs. The Pats won 40-23. So they blew them out. And I that's why I really like the Bucs here. I just feel like it's one of those where it's like, I don't care. I don't care how good the Niners defense has been. I don't care how shitty the Bucs have looked in recent weeks. Brock Purdy just should not be. He was the last pick of the draft. He was literally Mr. Irrelevant in this past draft.
Yeah.
Um, he just should he should not be giving points to Tom Brady. Same thing. Eastern team traveling out west. Obviously, and Bucks are right. Are the Bucks sub 500?
No,
They're
they're
6-6.
6-6.
But yeah, I mean, Brady's 7-2 against the spread Pacific time.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know. And also, I just thought about Big Cat. He's been saying this big thing too, where it's like fade Tom Brady at night and then bet him during the day. And he's been kind of making the joke that he's an old man, he's tired at that time, and you can't really trust him on that. But it's I mean, it is Tom Brady back during the day, and I like the Bucs here a lot. I just feel like it's another one of those where it's like in no world should Tom Brady be getting points from Brock Purdy. I think
Actually,
you gotta take Brady there.
actually a very, very funny and very insightful comment from Big Cat.
Yeah,
He's tired. It's true. Um, yeah, I think everything you just said is very logical and very accurate. Like it just doesn't make sense. I think the one thing that probably gives me pause is that probably the biggest issue that the Bucs have is that offensive line. Like that offensive line has had issues all season long. And I think even like didn't during that game, was it last week or the week before that Tristan Wirfs got hurt? Like they're very banged up on that line. And I do worry, even we were talking a couple games ago about the Dolphins and Tua having two of his linemen out. And that created a lot of issues for him. So I do worry about whether or not that's going to be a problem for Brady. But for the most part, he's had his team in very close games. He's had the ability to come back late a couple times this season. He is going against a rookie quarterback, a third stringer, who, to your point, really has no right being on the field with him. It seems like a spot where like the Niners are probably going to have issues on offense too. Purdy might even turn the ball over a couple times, give Brady a couple extra opportunities, which getting 3.5 seems like it's putting them in a better position to cover.
yeah. For what it's worth, Pro Football Focus PFF grade, Bucks are 6th in pass blocking. It's the run blocking where they're a little bit worse.
Mm-hmm.
They're 19th there. I think a big problem with them is that I forget the guy's name. I think it's Donovan Smith, but I think he has like the most holding penalties since he's entered
Yeah.
the league, and he had a
Yeah.
big one last week.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think it's just Todd Bowles, defensive coach. I just think about the kind of masterclass he put on in that Chiefs Super Bowl where the Chiefs couldn't do shit, and I feel like this could be one of those too where you know it's tough to game plan on the fly, right? You go into it. It's like when McGregor lost to Nate Diaz, right? Like you're spending all this time training and preparing to fight this one guy that it doesn't matter who they stick in there. You haven't really watched any tape on them. You haven't put any strategy around them. So you do kind of throw that shit out the window, and that's where it can get a little bit crazy. And I feel like that's maybe what happened last week, right? You spend all this time game planning for how the offense is going to go with Jimmy G, and sure he's maybe a glorified game manager, and that's all you're asking Brock Purdy to do, but it is different. You got no tape on the guy. Now you got a little bit more of a week to just prepare and say, all right, this is what we can do. They're probably going to run simple concepts, that type of thing. And I think that's exactly what Todd Bowles is good at, right? He can shut these things down. He's a great defensive mind. He can figure out the simple concepts and what you got to do to stop him. And I think it's just one of those where a rookie against a veteran defense like this, I think he's going to have a hard time getting things going. And unless McCaffrey and Debo can work with their handoffs and really make some magic, I think it'll be tough for them to move the ball consistently. So I think we could see a game that's kind of similar to maybe Brady against the Rams and Brady last week, where it might take some last second magic, but I think at the end of the day, we're going to be feeling good at the end of the fourth quarter, whether it's we have the lead or it's Brady with the ball in his hands driving to get some points for us.
Obviously, we'd like for him to win, but in this case, we only need him to cover, and
Yeah.
we're also getting that hook. It's 3.5. So it's a pretty good spot. Brady getting 3.5. I love that. All right. 2 games left. So next one is we get the Chiefs and the Broncos. In Denver, Chiefs are laying 9.5.
Yeah. I love the Broncos this year. This is another one where I feel, yeah, and I've been feeling whether it's going with or against them. I think I've had a great feel for them all year. I don't think it's just been, one side or anything. This feels like a game that could be very good for them. Wilson, he's 8-3 against the spread as a home dog. 34-19-2 against the spread as an underdog in general. He's 5-0 against the spread as a 7+ point underdog. I think this is going to be, Broncos defense gets the Chiefs in the mud. I think it's just too many points for what type of game this is going to be. I think it's going to be a low scoring game. I think 9.5 points is too much. Mahomes, it's also just one of those where he's not been a great against the spread quarterback, right? That's going back years now. I think it's now about this. This is going to be like wrapping up like the third season where he's really been somewhat mediocre against the spread. They win these games. I saw against road games, AFC West road games, he's 14-0. He's never lost. 9-5 against the spread, though. Of course, it's still a good against the spread record, but it's definitely not 14-0.
Mhm.
Good 7+ point favorite on the road, 7-0 against the spread, 7-0 straight up, 1-6 against the spread. 5+ points, 15-0 straight up, 8-7 against the spread. So, on these road games, and I think that yeah, let me see. Yeah, these road games, it's like he's winning these games. He beats up the division, but they're much tighter games. And you can even look back at the Chargers game early in the season, right? When the Chargers, Justin Herbert like broke his rib and then he still backdoored that spread.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's just too many points for this Chiefs team that's had trouble covering the spread over the past couple of years.
Um, Mahomes also, where's his stat? He's 17, 18, and 2 ATS in the months of November and December in his career.
Yeah,
500 ball there. Yeah, you're right. You have had a good read on the Broncos this year. And I want to continue to support you in that. I do just have some pause putting my faith in Russell Wilson with the way that team looks, especially when I read, where's the stat?
we did it last
Broncos,
week. Same,
what's that?
same. We did it last week.
We did. Can they give us magic 2 weeks in a row?
I mean, it's just one of those where it's like, I mean, they go under, right? And like we're
Yeah.
talking, these games are always 30 points, anything like that. Like, it's tough to get even 20 points on them. And I know it's the Chiefs and I know it's that offense and Mahomes and Kelsey, but it's like, I mean, it's really not that great of an offense. They don't have that Tyreek Hill anymore. Juju had a little bit of a resurgence, but it's like, it's still very much wide receiver by committee. They have no run game. And this Broncos defense is just so good that I think they can take advantage of that. You can't just be one dimensional against a defense like this. And of
No.
course, everyone's making the jokes about Nathaniel Hackett and how Russell Wilson has 8 touchdowns, Peyton Manning gets 7 in his first game as a Bronco. That offense has definitely been pathetic, but it's like they're still keeping these games tight for like no reason at all, right? I mean, I'm just looking at their last 5. They're 1-4, but it's a 4-point win, 7-point loss, 6-point loss, 13-point loss, and then 1-point loss last week. So it's like, these are still within, for the most part, within a score. And that would make it a comfortable cover there. But yeah, I just think it's going to be low scoring game. And until we see a Broncos game go over 40 points, it's just tough to take a favorite to win by 10 or more,
Mm-hmm. All right. I mean, let's we've been on a heater with them, so if you've got that same level of confidence as you've had in past weeks, let's just continue to ride it, we've said let's just continue to follow those trends until they beat us.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, last game, you get the Patriots and the Cardinals, Monday Night Football. Pats are laying 1.5 in Arizona, so Cardinals are a home dog. Let's see, a couple things I pulled from this, mostly about the Cardinals and about Kingsbury and Kyler. Under Kingsbury, the Cardinals are 12, 20, and 2 against the spread week 8 and after. He also had an awful record at Texas Tech. I mean, we've talked about this for the last couple of seasons. Just obviously how bad they've been as like a second half team. And they started off horribly this year as a first half team. Doesn't necessarily mean that they're flipping that, it could just mean that things are going to get worse. Kyler also not good at home, 12-7 ATS at home. And then he is against the D allowing 20 points or less. 2-9 straight up, 5-5-1 ATS. I I do like the spot for the Patriots. Um, it just seems like a good spot for them to bounce back, a little extra rest coming off that tough loss against Buffalo. They've lost a couple now. They had that Thanksgiving loss against the Vikings, but they look good in that. They didn't look good last week. They need a win. They're still in the mix. And this feels like a good opponent where they can maybe get a little bit, reestablish some confidence on offense, be able to move the ball, look good, get Mac looking good. And I think this defense can probably be very successful against Kyler. What do you think on this?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, extended rest, everything like that. Belichick obviously off a loss, extended rest. You don't have to go through all the numbers, but it's like, very good record straight up and against the spread. Especially after getting your doors blown off, stuff like that. This is also just one that I had kind of circled a couple weeks ago watching the Pats play at Minnesota because I think it really jumped off the screen how active that offense looked on the turf. And I was saying, Mac Jones put up a ton of fantasy points, and I was saying, what, because I got him in my dynasty league, I was like, I got to start him every week that he plays in a dome. And sure enough, the Pats are playing, in a dome this week. They're also playing in Vegas next week. I think that covers it for domes, but it's like that's 3 domes in 4 weeks. I was like, maybe this is like a little stretch for Mac to get some stats up. They could look a little bit faster on that turf and stuff like that. So I had already circled this, ahead of time. I didn't want to be, jump too quickly on it because, with our bias for the Pats and everything, maybe it's
Yeah.
worth looking at. But yeah, when you just really look at it, and then the Cardinals, they're a mess. This is the team that loses to the Patriots. This is the team that Belichick takes advantage of. And I think that defense can definitely, contain everything. And Belichick, he has had his struggles in the past with mobile quarterbacks, primarily Lamar. That's really what I always think of.
Yeah.
But I mean, I remember 2 years ago, right? I'm looking at it right now. The Pats won 2017. That was with Cam Newton at quarterback. It was a great win in New England. Against the Cardinals a
Mhm.
couple of years ago. So yeah, I like the Pats here too. I think this is a good spot for them. I like Mac on the turf.
Yeah. All right. Um, we got a lot of likes. So let's go back to the room. We've got in terms of games that we liked. We have the Ravens getting 2.5 in Pittsburgh. We have the Giants getting 7 at home against the Eagles. We had the Titans laying 4 at home against Jacksonville. The Panthers getting 3.5 in Seattle. The Bucs getting 3.5 in San Francisco. The Broncos getting 9.5 at home against the Chiefs. And the Pats laying 1.5 on the road in Arizona. A couple games that we leaned, did not like. Lions 2.5 point favorites at home against Minnesota. Buffalo 9.5 point favorites at home against the Jets, and then the Bengals 6 point favorites at home against the Browns. Anything in there that you like, just a strong love and feel quite compelled about?
Yeah, the more I sit on it, the more I like that Ravens plus 2.5. I mean, going into it and kind of doing all the research, I was really strongly feeling Steelers, Steelers, Steelers. And then once I kind of saw the stats, I was like, oh shit, maybe I should really be looking Ravens. And
Mm-hmm.
because of that's kind of why I like them more too, because we were talking about maybe the more unsuspecting picks, the ones that we kind of gloss over instead of the ones that we love, love, love. Those are the ones we should be looking at. So I've started to really like the Ravens a lot since we went over it.
Yep, I like that one too. I do like that Titans pick. I feel pretty strongly about that one. I don't know if you feel as strongly, if you have any
Yeah, no,
reservations.
I agree. That was one that I had marked down as well.
All right, so uh, let me make that an official. All right. So we had other options. We had the Giants, we had the Panthers, we had the Bucs, the Broncos, and the Pats. Um,
I mean, for what it's worth, I really like that Panthers pick. I like continuing to ride I guess the hot hand with the Panthers, and
well, and
it's
I think to your point, like that backfield's banged up too, and um, that's a little bit of what makes that offense go.
yeah.
Mm, so that might allow the Panthers to change up the defensive scheme a little bit and um, maybe focus more on the second, the passing game and stopping that. So I think that's an interesting pick. Let's mark that. Um, um,
So the Lions, I kind of just feel iffy on because it's one of those where it's like,
I'm
maybe it just stinks too much. Like I still like the
yeah,
spot, and like I said, maybe it's a blind bet on that spot, but kind of now that we're narrowing it down, I'm like, this is one that I'm feeling like it's kind of getting nudged out. Uh,
yeah. Um, I'm okay. I'm okay not making it a pick. And just kind of enjoying the game.
Yeah, because I mean, like that was something they were talking about on part of my take as well, where it's like, I mean, the Vikings, they have this great record in one score games, and you could kind of point to that being like, well, why are they in so many one score games? Or you could also look at it as like they're learning how to win in these tough spots instead of kind of just cruising to these wins and everything like that. And this just also feels like a year with the Vikings where it's like maybe we should stop with the Kirk Cousins and all that stuff and just be like,
Yeah,
maybe, with the coaching change and everything, maybe they just have found something and maybe they are just a good team.
yeah,
It's like,
they're not blowing the doors off people, but they are winning.
yeah,
And at the end of the day, it's all about winning. It's not how you win; it's just winning.
yeah.
Um,
That's not enough to switch me over to the Viking side
no,
because I do
no,
just think it's a spot bet for the Lions. But
yep,
yeah, when we're narrowing down the top five, I don't love it as much.
yep,
Um, so I mean, at least for the few different options. I mean, what like Broncos, Giants, Bucks, and Pats are kind of like the
yeah,
remaining like real likes that we had.
yep.
And what do you
Uh,
think? I mean, do you like that Broncos pick, or do you feel more confident in two other ones?
um, I think I probably feel more confident in the Patriots and the Bucks. Um, Maybe the Giants too. I mean, that Giants pick is interesting to me. Like getting a full touchdown with the extra point at home. With a guy like Dable as the coach.
Hmm.
Um, I think that's an interesting spot, especially with the Eagles coming off, like I said earlier, like coming off that big blowout win over the Titans, emotional win for AJ Brown. Now they go on the road, divisional game. Feels like I mean, look, and maybe this is something for you to look up quick. The public is on the Giants with this game. 61% against 39%
Yeah,
on the
I
Eagles.
don't really consider that to be like an overwhelming amount, though. It's
Yeah.
like it's gonna fall in somebody's lap. It's never gonna be like 50-50. It's like
Yeah.
it's really when it starts creeping more up to 70 that it starts to like
Yeah.
concern me for like a heavy right because it's like the public they're gonna be on a side, but it's when it becomes like an overwhelming majority that's when I really start to kind of look at it
Mhm.
sideways. Yeah, on Action Network, 62% of the bets are on the Giants, 81% of the money's on the Giants.
Oh, wow. Okay. All right. So, I mean, what do you think about the Giants pick then?
Yeah, I like it. I mean, that was one of the ones that I had as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So let's make that our fourth pick. Um, so now we're looking Broncos, Bucks, Pats for our last pick.
Yeah. I mean,
I
if
got
we, I mean, I'm probably going to take both anyways, but for my own. But I mean, I like going Brady against the rookie quarterback. I just think it's one of those where in no world should be a rookie be given points to Brady, and I'd be more inclined to take the Niners if the Bucks were a slight favorite.
mm-hmm.
Because I look at it that way and be like, no, no way, like that's when it kind of stinks to me. But it's like to see Brady getting these points and like just referring back to that game against the Titans where they just fucking killed them. They beat them by like 3 touchdowns, and they were underdogs going into the game. It just makes me think that, right? It's the same thing when you see Belichick against a rookie quarterback. It's like you just gotta. And I know that they're never on the field together, and they're never actually going head to head. It's not like LeBron versus Kobe or Magic versus Bird or something. But it's like there is something to that, and I think it's just one of those where everybody's looking at Brock Purdy, and I was commenting last week, and he had like that zip on the ball, and he looked good, but it's like he was the last pick of the goddamn draft.
Yeah.
And he's going against, and sure, you could also say, oh, well, Brady is the most famous 7th round pick ever. But, he was not supposed to be in this position. He was thrust into it by an injury, which I really felt like I knew was going to happen with Jimmy Garoppolo. It felt like that's how his story was supposed to go, right? It was like he gets brushed aside for almost no reason for Trey Lance by some weird stroke of luck, if you want to call it that, with Trey Lance's injury. He gets back in, brings the season back, and then all of a sudden, like I thought it was going to be like a shoulder injury. In my vision, I saw it being like a rotator cuff or something, but what is it, like a broken ankle or some shit like that?
I think a broken foot.
Yeah, it felt like that's how Jimmy's season was going to go, where he had the opportunity to kind of get the momentum back, and then it's like, he's injured now, and they're going to be like, all right, let's go back to Trey Lance next year, or, something like that. But yeah, I mean, I like the Bucs here. I just think that it's like, we're almost betting on Brady's toughness and him just kind of willing them to a win. But I kind of want to do that. It's fun. I like watching Brady with these comebacks. That was awesome last week, and the
Awesome.
one that he had against the Rams was fucking sweet too.
Yep. Yeah, for sure. Um, Also, I mean, I do just also want to point out about Brock Purdy. And again, you said it. He was the last pick in the draft. But, at Iowa State, decent numbers as a quarterback, 71% completion percentage. I think a 19-8 touchdown interception ratio. He had Breece Hall as his running back. And that team went 7-6
Yeah.
and lost the Cheez-It Bowl 20-13 to Clemson. This isn't like Brady, who, when he was at Michigan, even though he was a 6th-round draft pick, Brady was winning big games and big bowl games. Like
Yeah.
he was coming in, because that was when was it Brady? He played when, was it Drew Henson was kind of like and he was coming in and like cleaning up the mess that Drew Henson was leaving,
Yeah.
and these were in like big spots, like Sugar Bowls and in the Michigan Ohio State games and shit like that. So, it's not like we're talking about a college quarterback who, yes, he was Mr. Irrelevant, but like incredibly successful, like he was a winner type of thing. Yeah, let's take Brady with the points.
Yeah, that's the thing too. And when you look at it, like a guy that did what Brady did in college nowadays would not be going pick 199. Like maybe that's part of because Brady was like a trailblazer for that. But
Yeah.
it's like if somebody was winning like to that extent and doing what Brady did at Michigan when he was there, he would not be going in the 7th round anymore. I think it speaks more volume to how Brock Purdy was perceived, the fact that he was the last pick of the draft this year. And, sure, he was able to step in, but he did not like seize that job. He did not dethrone Jimmy Garoppolo. He's only playing because Jimmy Garoppolo broke his goddamn ankle.
Yeah, they have no other options.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So we've got just to recap, we're gonna go Ravens plus 2.5 against the Steelers on the road. Giants at home catching 7 against the Eagles. They're getting 6.5 in the circa 7 in the super contest. Titans at home laying 4 against the Jags. That's in the super contest. In the circa, it's 3.5. And then both the Panthers and Bucs, we're taking them as 3.5-point dogs. Panthers against the Seahawks in Seattle, and then the Bucs against the 49ers in San Francisco. And those lines are the same for the Westgate and for the circa.
Cool.
All right. I will put these picks in this evening, and we'll be ready to roll.
Sounds good.
All right, let's have a 5-0 week.
Yeah.
All right. I'll see you.
I'll see it.
Later.